So I had come across many years ago Tony Robbins's 6 basic human needs. And I was like, oh, that's good. So the problem with Tony Robbins is he'll present information without attribution. So some of it may be his own information and ideas, and some of it may be something he got from other people. There's not so I don't know if these are his basic human needs or if this is via him and he's citing something else. So I'm just letting you know where I got it from. And he has 6 and I added a 7th because I was like, oh, this is missing something. And additionally, we're going to talk about how abusers, because of how distorted they are as human beings, how they distort these needs and in how they approach relationships with the victim. All right, so the number one need is certainty and comfort. I don't mean it's the number one need. I mean, it's the first on the list. Certainty and comfort. And that loops into yesterday's video about predictability. That's where that would fit in. The second is variety. The third is significance. The fourth is connection and love. The fifth is growth. The sixth is contribution. And the seventh that I've added is self determination, power, empowerment. And I had read from somebody on Reddit, and it always stuck with me. And I'm not sure I could find it, so I'm not going to try and find it right now. They basically said if you ever see someone whose decisions don't make sense to you, they're likely meeting something about the situation is meeting a need for them. And so when I heard that, I was like, oh, you know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of the 6 basic human needs. And so whenever I see a situation with someone who seems to be acting in ways that don't make sense, for even what they're saying, I think of it in terms of, okay, which of these needs are they potentially meeting from this bad situation? So, as victims, sometimes we can also, from a wounded place, be meeting some of these needs in ways that are not healthy. All right, now we're going to talk about the inversion of this because abusers, because of there being a distorted person, they try to meet these needs in distorted ways. So they're valid needs, but the way they attempt to meet them is not valid, nor reasonable, nor healthy, nor safe. Okay, so the need for certainty and comfort and predictability. They do this by controlling the victim and also by extracting from the victim unconditional loyalty. So they feel as if they have complete certainty about what the victim is doing, how the victim will react, even what the victim thinks, that they can get the victim to think what they say the victim should think. And this is unilateral. This is not a two-way street, nor would any reasonable person want to. In my experience, most victims are not interested in controlling anybody, and they're not even the abuser. They just want the abuser to stop harming them. So this is a unilateral, this is a unilateral one-way thing, because victims would not want to treat somebody else this way. All right, the second is variety, and they meet this need by doing whatever they want to, and also by abusing the victim. They may escalate an abuse because it's like to them, it's like gambling, it's like pushing the button. What response might they get from the victim this time? If the victim hasn't had a lot of sleep, maybe the victim responds in a very emotional way. Maybe though the victim's had a lot of sleep and is trying to hold it together. Maybe they can get it to escalate into a fight, or maybe they can just cow the victim. There's an element of not knowing as much as they want to control the victim. There's also you don't have a certainty of knowing 100% how they'll respond every single time. So they're chasing dopamine, and the variety comes through abusing the victim or even being nice to the victim and switching it up. And so the victim is sitting there, you're walking on eggshells often because you don't know what's going on. It's very confusing. Again, confusion is one of the main ways you're in an abuse dynamic because nothing makes sense. What they're doing, what they're saying do not line up. All right. The third need they meet in a toxic way is significance, and they do this by making the victim center the abuser. Okay. It goes back to this saying in acting that I learned from Javier Bardem, actually. And basically, it's that if you want to portray someone who's a king, it's not so much about what you are doing as the actor, as the king. It's about how everyone's around you is responding. That is what indicates to the audience, to the viewer, that that person is the king. And this is what the abuser is replicating for themselves, because they can't generate that feeling of significance within themselves. They have to have other people act in a way that makes them feel as if they are significant. Let me go ahead and read this quote because it's so good. Hold on. Where is it? Um, oh, for Pete's sake. It reminded me of one of the most golden laws in acting. When you are going to play a king, you don't have to act like a king. You have to make sure that the people around you treat you like a king. And that's Javier Bardem. All right. The other thing that abusers do to make themselves feel significant is they make the victims betray themselves or their values, their ideas. So much of abuse is getting the victim to, in part, destroy themselves. This is why you'll see that dynamic of, an abuser will say, I want a traditional blah, 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 right? But they go out and they find like the strong, successful partner. And then they want to take that person and make them like a stay-at-home person, dependent person. They didn't want to go find the person who wanted to do that. They want to break somebody. That makes them feel, Taylor Tomlinson references it in one of her stand-up comedies. She's like you don't want somebody who wants it. You want to break somebody. And she did it in a funny way, but it's not funny. So by getting the victim to betray themselves, they and their values, they then they see themselves as being more important to the victim. And that's how they meet that need for significance. All right. So the connection, love, value, number 4, they make the victim worship the abuser. They extract unconditional loyalty, again, unilateral, so they're not giving it, obviously. They extract unconditional love, and it's not real love because abusers don't actually know what love is. They may hurt you so that there can be a makeup, and then uh, feeling intense and closer. So if you're talking about the cycle of abuse, you have the walking on eggshells leading to the inciting incident. And then once you have the inciting incident, often the victim will go to the person who hurt them to feel better. And that may make the abuser feel loved. Or if they can sabotage the victim so that the victim isn't able to be successful, that may make the abuser feel needed and therefore loved and important. So controlling the victim to make themselves get that hit of how they want to feel. The victim is their drug of choice for how to get the feeling that they want to feel. All right. So for growth, I'm not saying this is the only way, but the thing that jumped out to me was they meet the need for growth by punishing the victim, by growing in their control and power over the victim, by growing in their ability to be the arbiter of reality for the victim, by being able to define the victim to themselves. They are growing in knowledge of what the victim is thinking and feeling, what they value, things that they've done, and then using this knowledge to present themselves as an authority. So they are growing in this knowledge that they use to be toxic, harmful, and abusive. Let's see what I write. They learn more of the victim, and then I put mistakes in sarcastic quotes because they will not present it as mistakes, and they may not even be mistakes. All right. The value for contribution. Again, I'm not saying this is the only way, but this is the way that jumped out to me. They meet their need for contribution by stealing from the victim. So they may steal the victim's accomplishments or credit for those accomplishments. They may take credit for the victim's accomplishments or for the victim. So I'm the reason you're this way, or I'm the reason you were able to do this. This parallels something that actually does occur. In a healthy family, you are genuinely supported in being, you know, accomplished, successful. No one is a self-made person. W- Anyone who's made it anywhere generally has been assisted along the way, even if in small subtle ways we don't recognize. But you know, so that being having someone be appreciative for the support they received is not the same thing as what the abuser is doing, which is like stealing the accomplishments or stealing the credit. All right. And then seven, the self-determination, power, self-empowerment. They do this by powering over the victim. The more they abuse, the more power they feel they have, and therefore the more powerful they feel. Again, making themselves feel a certain way by using the victim to accomplish that. Whereas, like, for example, if you're a healthy person and you want to feel self determination, you want to feel power, it's more about I have will, I'm making choices, I'm executing like a plan, I'm building confidence and therefore gaining confidence, right? It's internal, it's not external, it's not dependent on somebody else gaining power over someone else. So anyway, I was going to talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs and Kaufman's hierarchy of needs, but I think I'll save that for another video because I'm trying to keep these short and I'm not always great at that. So I'm going to leave it here. I hope that made sense and I will talk to you next time.